All right, buckle up, listeners, because this deep dive is a wild one. We're talking about a case you sent in. It's got a woman accused of poisoning her boyfriend, a potential motive involving millions of dollars, and even whispers of a possible scam. So yeah, this one's got it all.
It really does sound like a twisted tale.
You got that right. So the story starts back in September 2023 in Minot, North Dakota. We're talking about Ina Kenoyer and her boyfriend, Stephen Riley Jr. Now, the Minot Daily News paints a picture of a seemingly happy couple, right up until Riley suddenly falls ill and dies under what can only be described as suspicious circumstances.
Suspicious is an understatement, especially when you consider what the police uncovered.
You're talking about Kenoyer being the one who called 911?
That's part of it, yes. But there's more.
Okay, I'm listening.
Well, the police report I read mentioned that friends of Riley told police that Kenoyer had made some disturbing comments.
Disturbing how?
Well, they claimed she had talked about poisoning someone with antifreeze.
Before or after Riley died?
That's the really unsettling part. These comments were made before his death.
Whoa. So that changes things.
Right. It's not just a tragic loss anymore. That detail right there introduces the idea of premeditation, which makes this a whole different ballgame.
And I'm guessing that's even before we factor in the alleged $30 million inheritance Riley was supposedly about to receive.
You're on the right track. That supposed inheritance is a major part of this whole saga.
I bet. Both the Daily Mail and the New York Post really honed in on that angle. It sounds like Riley was utterly convinced that he was about to become incredibly wealthy, inheriting a fortune from some long-lost relative.
That's what he believed, yeah.
And get this, the guy actually went as far as going to the airport to meet the lawyer who was supposedly bringing him the money. And what's even crazier is that's the very same day he got sick and died.
It's certainly a chilling detail.
You think it's just a coincidence?
I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
But it definitely adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
Speaking of layers, what about Kenoyer? Where does she fit into all of this with the inheritance?
Well, she claimed that she was entitled to a portion of this supposed fortune.
On what grounds?
She claimed that she was Riley's common-law wife.
Hold on. Did they even live in a state that recognizes common law marriage?
That's the thing about this whole case. There's so many twists and turns, and this is one of them.
So spill it. Did they or didn't they?
North Dakota law doesn't actually recognize common-law marriages.
So she wasn't entitled to anything?
Not necessarily. To establish a common-law marriage, couples typically need to present themselves as married to the public, intend to be married, and live together as husband and wife. It would depend on the specifics of their situation. But based on what I've read, it doesn't seem likely that Kenoyer's claim would have held up in court.
Wait a minute. Are you saying she might have poisoned him for absolutely nothing?
That's a very real possibility. And it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole twisted story, don't you think?
Absolutely. And we haven't even touched on Riley's son, Ryan. Before Kenoyer was even arrested, he took to Facebook, publicly accusing her of being involved in his father's death.
I read about that, yeah. It's a really sad situation all around.
It really is. It makes you wonder about how reliable things like that are, especially when someone is grieving.
You mean like eyewitness accounts and things like that?
Exactly.
Well, you see, when we go through something traumatic, our brains tend to prioritize emotional details over factual ones.
I never thought about it like that.
It's not that people are intentionally lying. It's just that their emotional state might have influenced how they process the events.
So in this case, Ryan Riley was clearly grieving and angry, which is completely understandable.
Right.
And those emotions could have colored his memories of what happened.
Precisely.
Wow. I never realized how much our emotions can affect our memories.
It's a powerful thing.
It's amazing how easily our memories can be influenced like that.
It really is.
But let's talk about how this whole trial played out. What ended up happening?
Well, Kenoyer ended up pleading guilty.
Really?
Yeah, and she was sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Wow, 25 years.
According to Newsweek, Riley's sister, Stephanie Gonzalez, spoke at the sentencing hearing. She talked about the devastating impact Kenoyer's actions had on their family.
I bet that was powerful.
It was. She basically said that Kenoyer had robbed them of their brother and of their chance to say goodbye.
It's a good reminder that cases like this aren't just about the victim, it's about the families too, and the friends. Everyone who loved the person who's gone.
Exactly.
Okay, so you ready for this? Remember that whole $30 million inheritance everyone was talking about?
How could I forget?
Well, it turns out it was a scam.
Oh, wow. So she really did all that for nothing.
It seems that way. The Daily Mail actually went into some detail about how this whole scam went down. It sounds like Riley was communicating with someone online who basically fed him this elaborate lie about being the heir to this fortune.
People fall for these things every day, unfortunately.
So. But you have to wonder how someone could be so gullible.
It's easy to judge from the outside looking in, but these scams are designed to be very believable.
So how did they reel him in?
Well, according to the article, they even went as far as setting up a meeting with a lawyer at the airport.
Wait, seriously?
Yep.
And I'm guessing no lawyer ever showed up?
You guessed it.
That's crazy. So what can people do to protect themselves from something like that?
Well, first of all, be very skeptical of any unsolicited communication you get that promises you some big inheritance, especially if it comes from someone you don't know.
That makes sense.
And never, ever give your personal or financial information to anyone online unless you're absolutely sure they're legitimate.
That's good advice. But still, going back to Kenoyer, I mean, poisoning someone for a lie. For a bunch of money that never even existed.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. It makes you wonder what was going through her head.
Desperation can make people do strange things.
That's for sure. Do you think Riley would have ever figured out it was a scam if he hadn't been poisoned?
It's hard to say. Maybe. Or maybe he would have gotten in even deeper.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know for sure.
That's true. You know, there's this other detail from the Metro UK article that I found strange. It mentions how Kenoyer was super active on Facebook after Riley died. Like, she was posting about him, even claiming that he'd killed himself.
Really?
Yeah.
That is strange.
I mean, who does that after they just committed a crime?
It makes you wonder if she was trying to throw people off her trail.
Right.
Or maybe she was in denial about the whole thing, trying to create this alternate reality where she wasn't responsible.
It's like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
This whole case is like a cautionary tale about the dangers of deception and how important it is to be skeptical of what we see and hear, especially online.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, these scams, they really prey on people. They make you feel like you have to act right away, like you can't stop to think or you'll miss out.
Right, like that whole act now or the deal is gone kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's scary how convincing they can be.
It really is.
And in Riley's case, who knows? Maybe he would have realized it was all a lie eventually, or maybe he would have been sucked in even deeper.
We'll never know for sure.
It's a tragic story all around.
Absolutely.
You know, there's one more thing that always stuck with me about this case. It's that detail from the Metro UK article. The one about Kenoyer being so active on Facebook after Riley's death.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
She was posting about him, even claiming that he'd died by suicide.
It seemed like a strange thing to do, especially for someone who supposedly loved him.
Right. It's like, if you just committed a crime like that, wouldn't you want to lay low? Not broadcast it to the world?
It's definitely odd behavior.
Do you think maybe she was trying to cover her tracks?
It's possible. Maybe she thought if she could control the narrative, people would be less likely to suspect her.
That's a good point.
Or maybe she was in denial, trying to convince herself and everyone else that none of it was real.
Like she was living in some kind of alternate reality.
Exactly.
It's hard to imagine what must have been going through her head.
I don't envy her.
Me neither. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive. This case is like a twisted web of lies, greed, and betrayal. And it really highlights how important it is to be careful about who we trust and to be aware of the dangers that are out there.
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for diving into this wild story with me.
Anytime.
And until next time, listeners, stay curious, keep asking questions, and stay safe out there.